Ahoy hoy, I'm Planetwalk, and this may not surprise anyone, but when I first heard about Flat Earth, I thought that it was just a joke. But when I realized that yes, there are actually people that believe the Earth is flat, my mind was blown. And the reason for that is because it takes a whole new level of crazy to actually believe the Earth is flat. In fact, it's so obvious the Earth isn't flat that I figured it out within 5 seconds. So today I'm going right back to basics and explaining why I never believed for a second that the Earth was flat. So when I was introduced to this flat Earth concept, I knew quite a few people in different countries who I'd often talk to, and they often went to sleep before I did because when it was sunny for me, it was often getting dark for them. And a lot of these people were from America because New Zealand shares a lot of daylight hours with America. So when it came to people in Britain, I hardly ever got to talk to them because their daylight hours were completely opposite to the daylight hours in New Zealand. So from that, I was able to conclude that the sun is visible to different people depending on their location at different times. But here's the thing that was literally the first thing that I heard from Flat Earth was an explanation for this. So what Flat Earth has proposed is that the sun circles above our heads and only illuminates a part of a flat disk like what you're seeing now. At first glance, this may appear to explain why some areas of the globe, why some countries have sunlight whilst others don't. The problem here though is that it doesn't fit with what we observe in reality. So what do we actually observe in reality? Well, we observe the sun going below the horizon. Now, if the Earth were flat, we should never see the sun set. In fact, it should always be visible in the sky. This animation here shows what the sun should look like if it was circling above a flat plane. In this animation, the sun is at a height of 1,000 kilometers and has a diameter of 32 kilometers, but the diameter isn't really relevant for this. And in this, the radius of Earth's equator is 6,300 kilometers. The sun is circling above the equator and the camera is positioned roughly in New Zealand. Now, if you've been paying close attention, you'll notice that the sun has never gone below the horizon, not even close. Now, Flat Earthers like to simply dismiss this point by saying, but the law of perspective. Now, the supposed law of perspective that they're referring to here is as an object above the ground gets further away from an observer, it will appear to go lower. Now, of course, that's not actually what the law of perspective states because it's a bit more nuanced than that. So what they're actually trying to describe here is when an object is traveling away from an observer in a straight line, it will appear to converge on a point which is in the same direction away from the observer's eyesight as the object is traveling. To put this in more simple terms, if you were to draw a line out from a person's eye that was parallel to the direction in which an object was traveling, the line would appear as a point to the person and the object would appear to converge in on that point. But of course, flat earthers aren't quite that articulate and just say, object gets further away from person, object gets lower. Ugh. The thing that they don't realize, of course, is that an object traveling away from an observer parallel to the ground will never appear to go below the ground. This means that if the Earth is flat, the sun should never appear to go below the ground. Or as most people put it, the sun should never go below the horizon. Now, flat earthers do have responses to this, but these responses are ridiculous. They're basically starting from, the Earth is flat, now I'm going to try and make all these observations that don't fit with the flat Earth, but we'll try and make them fit anyway. I do believe the correct term here is cognitive dissonance. Now, I'm not done because there is a whole lot more to just really drive the point home that I can go on about. So here's a question. If I'm on the equator during the equinox and it's midnight, according to the flat Earth model, what should the angular size between the sun and the ground be? So thankfully for flat earthers, they don't actually have to do any thinking because I went ahead and did the calculations for them. You're welcome. So depending on the height that you use for the sun, you can get a few different results. I decided to start with a 1,000 kilometer high sun. And the result that I got for that was 4.5 degrees. To put that in context, that is 8.5 times the angular size of the moon. But I can do even better because, you see, some flat earthers say that the sun is at a height of 3,000 miles. What might the angular size of that look like? Well, when I plugged that number into the calculations, we get an angular size of 21.5 degrees. That is 41.5 times the angular size of the moon. Now, I don't care how much angle of attack you want to invoke, I don't care how much refraction you want to bring into this, that shit is never setting. And do you want to know the kicker? I was being generous here. These are calculations for midnight on the equator, not for sunset, but midnight. If we plug in the values for sunset, we get an even more laughable and fantastical value of 30 degrees, which is 58 times the angular size of the moon. So, flat earthers, do you actually know what you're saying when you say perspective? Because I don't think you do. Because otherwise, you would have figured out these problems ages ago. And seeing as I'm on the subject of perspective, why doesn't the sun decrease in angular size over the day? If the reason for night and day is the sun moving closer and further away from the observer, it should change size over the day. And how do we know this? Well, I'll give you a few seconds to figure it out. And the answer is perspective! So yes, as the sun moves closer and further away from someone, perspective says that it should change in angular size. Now, to be fair, some flat earthers do claim that the sun does change in angular size over the day, and they take video of it, but this video is done without the use of a solar lens. Now, why is a solar lens important? Well, just look at how huge the light is on the back of my phone. It's absolutely massive, but when I turn it, it appears to get smaller. So very bright objects can cause glare, which affects the size that it appears to be. Using a solar filter reduces the glare. Now, when we use a solar filter, what we find is that the sun does not have any noticeable change in angular size during the day. Now, what I've talked about today isn't very difficult to figure out. Some people may have a bit of trouble with the calculations, but the rest of it is very basic stuff. You don't have to be working at CERN to test this. All you have to do is have friends in other countries. Now, flat earthers, before you start bashing your heads into the keyboards, producing sentences which make about as much sense as a 2012 Doomsday Prepper in 2019, think about it. I don't want to hear excuses of, oh, we don't know what the sun is, but where's the curve? Because you know what? You've been shown the curve. Time and time and time again. So if you're serious about flat earth, try and actually solve this instead of just brushing it aside. And don't just say perspective, because that shows that you don't actually understand what you're talking about. So anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you like this video. Leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on this issue. As always, a big shout out to my $20 or more patrons. TheSunExpress, What Jesus, Fight the Flat Earth, Holmes, Hugh Jarsz, M.C.Nutkin, Wolfie, String News 1, Ashpanash, Reynolds, Curvy New Yorker, OneTrueChaos, and Syssiphus. If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon, link will be in the description. But anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching. Yes, I did pretty much take a nap halfway through the video.